Oh, well, howdy, Mr. Justin.
Hello, everybody. Alrighty. Welcome to our, what is this, 7th, 8th, I don't know, AMA this year. This is our September AMA. I also just realized that if they talk, you're not going to be able to hear them. Fortunately, no one has said anything yet. Let me just fix this real quick before anyone notices. There we go. All right, you guys can unmute now. You should be able to chat. Folks will hear you.
Happy Friday,
afternoon,
guys.
evening, morning, etc.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Happy whatever time of the day it is where you guys are. Just a heads up to everyone. I know in the past, there's a bunch of places you can ask questions. Ideally, if you're in the Zoom, please put them in the Q&A section. Don't put them in chat. There's also questions being asked in YouTube. I'm trying to monitor both of those, but if I watch YouTube and the Q&A and the Zoom chat, that's a lot for my brain. So if you could either put it in the Zoom Q&A or the YouTube chat. For some reason, folks say they don't see video. I am going to figure out why right now. That is odd because it worked a moment ago when I was testing it with you guys. Why Why is Zoom not sharing video? Give me one quick second here. I'm going to just remove and re-add Zoom. I think I know why. I think it's when I changed. I think it's when I changed us from the test room to the real stream. I think it changed the name of the executable that was running. And that is why. Yep, here we go. Zoom webinar. Bingo, problem solved. There we go. Now everybody should see us. Sorry about that. Glad I was checking chat. Yeah, apparently when you go from the webinar test mode to the actual webinar, it changes the executable running file name, which
Lovely.
broke OBS. So there we go. There should be video now. If you folks aren't seeing video still, let me know and I will slap my computer. Anyways, welcome everybody to our AMA. This one, when we set up kind of the notification, like always, an AMA is that, an AMA, ask us anything. But in light of some of the recent stuff that's been going on, we especially encourage questions around the Cultivation Grant or now the 1.2.6 release and the Time Lord fix around Bluebox Time Lords if you want to, and a few other things. So yeah, we got a few things already here. Let me pull up what's been coming in. Alrighty. So let's just kind of what we got here. I'm just gonna go through some of these in order. So if I actually skip one and go to you and come back to you, it's just because they came in out of order on me. I'm not picking preferences or anything based on who asked. The first question we got is, what are the benefits of being a Chia Grant recipient? If it includes monetary value, will it be from the XCH pre-farm? That's an easy one. The answer is no, it won't come from the pre-farm. We kind of cover this a little bit on the FAQ on the page, but basically it is a monetary grant. It's cash. Generally USD, although if there's a particular reason why, given where you're located and what you're doing, it shouldn't be USD, you know, we can look into that. But no, it's a cash grant. Yeah. We're not cashing out any of the pre-farm for this.
I'd add we could certainly use BTC easily. Yeah. And then the other thing I'd add is that I've never really understood why people wanted to pay developers in their coin, which means the developers have to sell the coin to themselves. Anyway.
Yeah.
Later when the world changes, sure. But right now it seems like fiat's the better answer.
Especially because I know we put down something like the theoretical max is around like 250 USD. Like if we gave someone 250,000 US dollars worth of Chia and the only thing they could do with it is to immediately sell it for money in order to pay for what they're doing, that's not great for everyone, just because that's a lot to move and liquidate in one day when we can just give them cash. So what we have next here. Are you planning on announcing to the community when changes to the network are being implemented in an effort to prevent the confusion that occurred with the Blue Box Time Lords? That's a great question. I'll let Justin answer most of that, but I'll start with, in theory, what we did shouldn't have warranted an announcement based on testing and expectations. Like, it was business as usual doing that. But I'll let Justin go into that a bit more if he wants to.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of hit the nail right on the head there, that blue boxing is a thing that we've been doing since the beginning of time. Like, we've been running blue boxes on the blockchain since there was a beta blockchain. And then launch day, we were running blue boxes. In fact, when we turned off our new whiz-bang fleet of blue boxes, it didn't drop to zero. There were quite a few blue boxes running that aren't Chia devices. So the change of implementing blue boxes, I would not say is a massive change to the network. And all things being considered, or all things being equal, that probably wouldn't have even been an issue. But unfortunately, we did find that issue that, with the nodes. And I don't think it was all nodes either, because we did some profiling and we were able to see that most nodes were fine with the increase in blue boxing, but there were some nodes that were definitely impacted. We intend to, when we make massive changes like spinning up a large fleet of blue boxes in the future, to do that on the test net first, and then do slower spin up. Honestly, when we spun up the blue boxes, we were trying to invert the curve on how many uncompressed blocks are being created, because we felt it had grown out of hand. And that's why we're going to be pretty aggressive in turning them back on in after the next release. So 1.2.6, I believe. After that release, we're going to, or 1.3.0, or whatever the next major release is, we're going to turn the blue boxes back on in incremental steps up to the initial level we were at again before we turned them off last week. So that's our plan right now, because it is very important for the blockchain to have compressed blocks. And as Jay said, that was kind of business as usual. But to address the core of your concern, yes, when there are massive changes to the network, we do intend to announce them. And when we were making massive changes to infrastructure, we'll be announcing that on our status page. We've gone through a couple dozen patch cycles already with that status page up, and every time there's any kind of change to what we're running, we will the status up there has changed. So you can definitely check there. And then, as our automation matures, maybe we could even do in the announcements. I just don't want to clutter announcements up too much with maintenance announcements, because we are at a little more of a higher clip for maintenance improvements now as the DevOps team is growing. So yeah, but thank you for the question. I really appreciate that.
Also, I'd add that the whole goal here is that you really shouldn't care about us. So, to the extent that some of the stuff isn't where it should be, it's hopefully going to be a place where you don't care that we do any of these sort of changes. The next one that anybody should really care about is when we start rolling out ASIC Time Lords, and it's just going to be kind of a little weird window when we do that. That one we'll certainly talk about. But the whole point here is that, like, if every single Chia-owned machine fell over today, the network would be fine. And what we were trying to do is catch the blockchain up, save everybody time.
Yeah, if we get Thanos snapped overnight, like, no one should notice, ideally, to get to that point. Next question: when NFT games support?
When are you writing it?
Yeah. So on the subject of that comes into the subject of a lot of questions we get. When is it going to be this? When's there going to be that, like, running on the chain? And the answer is when people build it. Like, we're building the infrastructure to allow you to build those things on it. But those things are very rarely ever built by the people who make the blockchain. They're built by the community. There actually is an organization, I can't remember the name off the top of my head right now. It's been discussed in Keybase, who is working on some NFT stuff that we're kind of providing a little bit of technical support to. I believe if you have questions about that, you can ask in Keybase. You can ask Efficient about that. I think he was kind of talking about that stuff. But there's been some conversations in, I think, the general channel on Keybase about that very subject, about some people who are kind of experimenting in that place right now.
Yeah, for a more general answer, the public roadmap on the Trello board has some things that we're working on, like the Chia Asset Token Standard. That's all actually up on the public roadmap. And so there's some stuff that we're cleaning up as far as the actual implementation of the specifications to have interoperability and compliance between people that are developing apps and tokenization stuff. And so that's all up there on the roadmap. So a lot of stuff coming very, very soon.
And I got two questions back to back here from our friend Chris over at the Chia plot. I'm gonna do the easier one first, and then go back to the more complicated one. We did encourage people, if they wanted to ask us about some of our how we handle trademark and IP, because there's been some kind of questions about that enforcement in the past, that we encourage those questions this particular session. So we're gonna get into some of that with him. I'm expected him to have questions for us. So the easier question, first of all, is what is Chia Network's plan to start making revenue? That sounds like a great one for Gene.
Yeah. So actually, it's something I'm going to quote Misha on. So for every dollar in incremental revenue we get, and I could go through the entire message about how, we get about $9 of enterprise value. So, when you're thinking about this, it's like we're a software company, we get like 30% gross margins, and you get like a 30x EBITDA multiple. And so, like, $1 revenue, $9 of enterprise value. For every single dollar in coin price, we effectively get about $15 million worth of enterprise value. So especially early on, revenue is not our top priority. I will say, however, that tends to flip itself around. The types of projects that we're going to be involved in are done by governments and banks, and they need the types of tech support that they'd frankly rather be paying you. But what we're trying to do is make sure that revenue doesn't get in the way of getting some of these groundbreaking new projects on Chia first. So we're not really worried about it. The pre-farm, one of its great utilities is it allows us to raise fiat pretty easily, as you've seen before, and as we expect to remain the case. And so therefore, ultimately, I think revenue for us ends up being that we'd like to cover, the operating cost of everybody you see here at some point, but it's not the first thing we're focused on. We're most focused on getting adoption today.
All right. And then the next question on that one is about trademark. So Chris asks, on your website, chia.net, we're currently using the registered trademarks of major tech companies like Apple, Microsoft, and IBM without following their respective brand guidelines. Do we hold a licensing agreement with them, similar to the one that we ask the community to use, or are we using them differently through fair use?
So I want to make sure that we talk about this in a little bit. We're absolutely using it fair use wise, and the concern is that often when people surface these other sites that are supposedly using our logos fairly, they're seeing 2 or 3 iterations later after they were trying very hard to pull themselves off as being us. So what you see is people will be walking back from the line, and then they will raise a stink because they still can't really confuse people that they're us. So, the concern here is don't confuse with being Chia Network Inc. And if you do that, we will come after it. If you do not, we won't. And, it's very, very realistic that you'll use both our logo and our name, but that's when you're referring to us or you're referring to the coin, right? So, it is a bit of a gray area in certain places, but the reality is that most of the things you've heard about, their original intent has been whitewashed away on the web and are now getting closer to compliance, but not necessarily there.
Yeah, I would add that very often when something hits Reddit or Twitter about people complaining about how we're communicating with them on those issues, sending in the lawyers, so to speak, is generally like the last step in many steps that leads to that point. And by the time it's gotten to that point, a lot of conversation has already happened that is conveniently glossed over by the person complaining on social media. And so what you're seeing is after all that's happened. So as Gene said, there's often been a point to where they did something, we reached out, they kind of fixed it, but not all the way. We reached out. They fixed it a bit more, and we were like, okay, look, we said do A, B, and C. You did A and B and said we're done. Like, we very clearly said do C. And somewhere along there is where they get upset. And then that's when you guys find out about it. And so you're seeing, like he said, the aftermath of that, because really a lot has happened before we've gotten to that point, usually. So it's the perception of what you see versus what led to that's often a little different. And we're not gonna, every single time someone tweets and says, hey, Chia sent me this angry email, like, I'm not gonna sit there on Reddit and share with you the 40 email thread that we had with that person leading to that point, because it's not cool for us to do. Like, it's kind of a dick move on our part to do that, unless absolutely necessary. That's a private legal conversation between us and them. And so even if they're kind of trying to throw us under the bus, we're still going to take the higher road and not just, share with you private email chains with them that led to that point. So it's a little hard to clear up that misunderstanding sometimes, but rest assured that's usually not the first conversation that happened.
Yeah, like in the example, for instance, in the question, which was like, we're using the Windows logo to indicate that for our download for the Chia software is compatible with Windows. We're not saying or suggesting that it's certified for Windows or certified for the Windows App Store. We're saying this is compatible, and it's under. I'm just sitting here looking at the Microsoft trademark guidelines, and it basically says use Microsoft product icons to signify when you're compatible or interoperable with Microsoft product. Like,
and a lot of those companies, those guidelines about brand usage apply to the context and how you're using the brand. If you're making a reference like this works on Windows, you don't actually have to follow the brand usage. They would, sometimes some companies are like, hey, we wouldn't mind if you follow this, but it's not a requirement to use them in the context. Now, if you're making big splashy pages, we're approved by the Microsoft certified program and we have this badge to them and we're this partner, then they have standards that as part of that you have to do a certain way. Just like the Chia Cultivation Grant, if you get a grant from us, we have branding about being a grant recipient that comes with guidelines that is part of the grant agreement. But if someone out there was writing about the grant program and just said, hey, there's a cultivation grant, we're not going to hold them to the branding guidelines. We're going to say, just make sure you use the right logo. That's the correct logo.
Also, before we get off the topic, just because I get this question a lot in Keybase and other places, if you're launching a news site, and all I can do is talk about news around Chia, and it's not commercial in any other way, and I'll put an asterisk on what I mean there, that's not needing a license. You'll be fine. The commercial that we kind of expect you to do is, advertising, referral links, the, usual media business. But, if you start offering plotting as a service, or, you're putting yourself out in a way that makes it look like you're a Chia official something, like an explorer, and you're making it look like it's Chia official, that's a problem. But if you're making it say that it's Chia compatible, that's fine. Using the word Chia compatible, the word compatible makes things go much differently than, Chia best explorer.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's that for now. I expect we'll come back to this topic in different ways further in the call. So I get two that kind of go together. Actually, no, before that, I'm going to do a real quick and easy one, get it out of the way here. Why is Bram not in the AMA? Two reasons. One, I just didn't invite him. I put this together and I sent out. I did. Hey, who wants to kind of join me in this space in a couple of areas? And honestly, I didn't think to add Bram, and there's two reasons for that. One is ADHD. Two is a practical thing. Bram is great to have on the AMAs, and we're certainly going to have him on lots of AMAs. But I think a lot of people hang their hat a little too much on Bram, the word of Bram. Bram is our visionary. He is our leader. He is the brilliant mind behind a lot of what we do. But there is a lot here besides just Bram. And I want people to understand that, like, there's a lot going on at Chia that isn't dependent on Bram entirely. And that's a good thing. Sometimes people throw a fit because Bram posts a picture of a plushie on Twitter when something's not working. And they're like, why aren't you fixing that thing? And the answer is there's like 20 some engineers and 10 of them are already working on it. They don't need Bram in the kitchen making it more complicated. So I kind of want to help reinforce that also by not having him on every single AMA, because while you guys would love to ask him questions and we would love to have him here, it just kind of further reinforces the thing that, like, nothing's possible without Bram. And I want people to understand that that's not the case. Nothing's possible without Gene. That's the problem. I'm kidding.
That's getting better. I did not run today's AMA.
I'm kidding. And that's actually why he's hired a lot of us, is to fix that. For example, if you kind of notice, the production quality for the AMA kind of went up a little bit. We got an intro video. We got some music. And I've taken this over now. You're going to see me hosting pretty much most of these going forward for that kind of reason.
You may also not see me on all of these anymore. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. If you at Bram in the support channel, you're probably not going to have him respond on why you're. Yeah. While it's not working or something.
Look, the second most hilarious one was when they at me, and I'm like, I'm not going to help you with the sync issue privately. Sorry.
So, and then now the question I want to tackle, it's been asked both a couple times in the Q&A section and also on YouTube, and that is IPO when. And my favorite part was this particular person said, IPO when, and Gene, you are not allowed to use the words accelerated or path.
Soon.
There we go.
Look, I will pause here. What you cannot do, honestly, is give you people a direct timeline until we can. But that requires a couple other steps, and it'll be really obvious when that occurs. But the plan has not changed. There have been positive developments that play with timing a little bit, and I think a lot of that will make a lot more sense when we're able to talk about some of the things we're up to. And it's important to pause. A lot of blockchains aren't dealing with the real world. They're dealing with other DeFi collectives and developers, and I don't wish to denigrate those. But when you're talking about changing like global markets or dealing with an entire sector of commerce, it's a bunch of parties who don't really want to talk about it until they do. And so we're doing a lot of work with those kinds of folks, and until those things are done, we can't really get into it. But, for example, like the Cultivation Grant most recent recipient, that was another thing where people were like, when are you going to do this or when are you going to do that? And we intentionally waited until our partner was ready to talk about it and was able to, be there and have the press response they wanted. And so from that perspective, please bear with that there's a lot of things going on that we can't talk about them until we can.
And to follow up on that, something that came up in chat actually twice now, during discussing this, it's been mentioned twice here, and I see it a lot on Reddit, is please don't SPAC. I just want to kind of reinforce the fact that this brought up a lot. I don't think people fully understand how that world works. We don't go out and say, hey, someone make an SPAC and acquire us. SPACs are formed, and then they go shopping for someone to buy after they've raised their money and formed. So I'm going to kind of reinforce that. Like, you don't go hunting for an SPAC as a solution to an IPO. They come to you.
Yeah. Also, an SPAC is just a different way to go public.
Yeah.
There's nothing really different about it at all. It has certain things that are better, certain things that are worse. It's a bunch of trade-offs. It's something we don't completely rule out, but again, that's just because we don't rule any valid path to being public out.
And an SPAC is just a bunch of people who say, hey, we want to take a company public that we think will be profitable. Please give us money to do that. People give them money, they have a war chest, and then they go find a company and take it public. Like it's not that much difference than it's going public. Here's one there's several of, which is a very near and dear hurdle to my heart currently this week. Any updates on major exchanges and getting on further exchanges that we aren't currently on?
Well, so you'll see over the last month, about every 2 weeks is a new exchange. I would expect that path to continue. And I expect that some of the things we're working on for Q4 are going to accelerate certain pieces of that. But again, those things are somewhat interrelated with the various projects we're working on the go-to-market side.
Yeah, and also I talked about this a little bit on Reddit this week. It's a process. There are some exchanges where you fill out a submission form, and like within 24 to 48 hours, they're like, yeah, this is cool, we're okay with you, and they list you. There are some exchanges that it takes like 8 weeks of paperwork and submissions and resubmissions, and then like subjective decision making on their part in a black box with no answer, and then you have to wait 45 days to respond. Like it's a process. Different ones have different ways. And admittedly, the thing people ask us the most about is U.S. exchanges, and U.S. exchanges have the most paperwork and the most red tape for the practical reasons. So it just takes time.
Also, the truth of the matter is there's not generally a major exchange that has enough headcount in the new listings department. Full stop.
Yeah. Let's see. What else do we got here? What are our opinions about delist of XCH swaps in? I can never pronounce. Who is it?
Huobi.
Huobi. I never
Huobi.
pronounce it. Okay. Any thoughts on
Yes,
this?
it was one of the 3 pairs they list, and they're our top trading partner. Otherwise, I think it was just that no one was doing the swap, but they are a big piece of all volume, so I don't think there's anything that's going to change actually there.
We also got one here. What do you think might be the reason people are so crazy scared, and I would say obsessed, about the pre-farm?
Well, I think there's some history here, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a bunch of crappy projects that have absolutely rug pulled people. And so, it's like, wait, am I going to get rug pulled? And, look, the answer we often give, and it's true, if Bram wanted a rug pull, he would have done an ICO in 2017 and be sitting on a beach earning 20% and not dealing with all of us. The reality is we're here to actually do what we're trying to do. And we're trying to build an ecosystem beyond the blockchain infrastructure. Like, we want to grow the entire size of the blockchain world. Such that it becomes not a special world. In fact, it's just called finance. And that's going to take a lot of capital. And that pre-farm really gives us the opportunity to raise that capital and pay people well. We're starting to see this. 2 more community members will be signing up next week for full-time work. One of them is pretty darn famous. Well, actually, both of them are now that I think about it. We'll wait until we actually talk about them officially. But, it'll let them make a decision to not keep their kind of okay jobs. They could focus full-time on Chia and, really go that next level with us and with their tools that they're bringing with. So, it's an important point that this thing is the tool we use to be able to build real shareholder value and long-term use it as the tool that we distribute to the shareholders these coins. And that's after everybody gets a chance to be a shareholder.
Next question we got here. This one I actually just discussed on Reddit earlier today. Are you still in contact with Ledger about support on their hardware? Any news? Ledger is a commonly asked thing. A couple of their hardware wallets as well as. It comes down to 2 things.
Let me check the channel.
Yeah. Most of the hardware wallets, we have commented on some of these topics in their own GitHubs. We have spoken with a few people there. Almost all the hardware wallets come down to the same problem for almost all of them, and that is BLS support. They just don't fully have it yet. Some have some of it, but not all of it. They're going to have it because F2.0 requires it. Several other new technologies provide it. They're all working on it. It's just until they have it, they can't properly support us. And there's very little we can do about that. Like, they understand the importance. We've stressed the significance. They know the significance. We can't walk into their office, sit down at their own desk and code their updates for them. So this is, we just along for the ride with you guys.
Yeah, we're hopeful that actually on Trezor we might be able to help just because they're thinking about making a separate community firmware. So you'd have to learn a different firmware, but it would be, for all the other things they don't necessarily support immediately. And there we can. So yeah, let's put it this way. It is no lack of developers or money that keeps those from getting done. It's more that we need things from them that's going to be in their ecosystem and make it work correctly. Because, ultimately we all want this done right so that you actually are getting a secure signing implementation on Trezor and Ledger.
Exactly. What else we got here? So this one comes from our Chinese Keybase channel that we spun up, and that is, do we have a new roadmap for what's coming up next, or what the current main focus is after now the pooling protocol is done, and what's our next major steps after this? And along with that, there's been a couple other questions as well that came in around things like, what are we doing to promote more adoption of Chia and to grow this whole thing, and any announcements that we might have planned the rest of this year around that?
Well, I'll go with the last thing. The announcement will be announced when the announcements are announced. So yes, we're doing stuff. But coming back to the roadmap, the first place to go look is our Trello board, which is linked off of the project tab on the Chia blockchain GitHub repository. That has been going through a transition from me to Paul Hainsworth. It is now much closer to in sync and moving forward. Paul and I have been agreeing on what a kind of overall roadmap for the next 18 months looks like. We have a version of that we want to be able to unpack a little bit and make available to everybody. And that's just, we're busy and we'll get it out soon so you have a little higher level view as well. The direct answer for what are we up to is cats, cats, and cats. So color coins going to be renamed cats, Chia asset tokens. And so we're going to have the cat standard 1. It is a slight upgrade from the colored coins that we were using in beta. And it's based on a lot of things we learned as we were doing plot NFTs. Very good enhancements. And because we're using Graftroot, a kind of neat standard that continues to be flexible over time and allow issuers to be able to create new rules and changes. And in fact, one of the things the CAT standard is going to allow is upgrade by the end user from like a CAT 1.0 of a carbon credit to a CAT 2.0 of a carbon credit on their own. So we're excited about that. The thing that will follow that is actually some of the DID implementation. So if you've been watching GitHub closely, you've been seeing we've been playing with DID wallets to make sure all of the backup stuff is working and are enabling them privately but not publicly yet. We're going to be adding the integrations between DIDs and CATs to give access controls and KYC and those kinds of things to different asset issuers. So that's the short piece.
I saw an internal demo, of our DID wallet and functionality, and it's really powerful as far as like, and it's a decentralized identifiers, I think is what it stands for. Yep. But it allows you to have kind of more advanced multi-sig support and recovery and really, really powerful stuff.
Yeah, we are, Christopher Allen, Bram, and I go way back, like 1996-ish back. And what Chris is doing is great, and we're big proponents of the WebDID standard. We believe that it's going to be the way you're going to do identity and login and access control through the future. The other thing that is coming is an Electrum style wallet. So the wallet will be getting replaced with a much improved wallet. And so these things are kind of all dovetailing together where the new CAT standard will be managed and the new DID standard will be managed by the new Electrum wallet that will come in. Currently being debated whether there's 2 binaries or 1 in the short run, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. So this next question is one that I think Justin will probably have a good answer for, but also Gene loves this. It comes up in Keybase a lot. He always has a screenshot ready to go, like within seconds. I'm kind of surprised how quickly he gets this data. But that question is, do we have an internal estimation of the global reach and penetration of the client? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, it was just posted in the chat the other day.
Yeah. About once a week, we get asked this, and Gene's like, boom, screenshot.
Gene's uncanny ability to do that is because of the work of some really smart guys that we hired recently. And so, yes, we do. It's just over 300K over the last 5 days, I believe.
We missed the ones behind the Great Firewall, so it's actually closer to 400 when you add them back.
Yeah. Without the IPs we can't reach because of the Great Firewall. We're putting together some metrics on like reliability of nodes, and we're going to hopefully be able to publish the information. How many nodes, how many reliable nodes, what is the qualification for a reliable node to the public. We just need to mature that the platform we're using underneath and decide how exactly we want to get that information out to users. But 100%, that's one of the things my team is working on, preparing and getting ready for public consumption.
And our next question, back to the pre-farm. The pre-farm tracker shows no activity in the tokens. Correct, true. But it does show there's 2 addresses with about 9.1 million Chia and 2 addresses with 1.3 million Chia. Is there any logic under this that we can talk about? Before I let Gene probably answer that, I do want to actually correct this. The numbers aren't quite right. It's 9.1 million Chia and some odd mojo, and 1.3 million Chia and some odd mojo, because random people keep transferring mojo to the pre-farm. Just so you know, if you do that, we can't stop you. It's a blockchain. But if you do that, we mean it when we say we can't touch that. We can't spend it. So, like, it's gone.
Not yet.
I mean, for now, not later. But thank you for your donations, I guess.
So the quick answer is, for expediency's sake, it was easier to actually mirror the 1/8 to the farmer and 7/8 to the pool. So what you're seeing there is the farmer reward and the pool reward for both of the 2 pre-farm elements, the US and the Switzerland.
Yeah, I think,
and I believe any oddity in the transactions is because Mariano was just testing to be sure before he sent the whole farm, so to speak.
Before he lost $5 billion.
Yeah.
I think also, if I remember correctly, before there were the 4, there was actually even originally 2, right? There was 2. It was like you said, it was the 75% and the 25%, and then we just split those in half. Yeah. What we got here next? Another one from Chris. Can you explain the concept of read-in as it relates to the IPO and the disclosures that are legally required by everyone that would know about the details and timelines?
Well, let me talk about the process. When you're doing either a regular S1, either an underwritten offering or a direct listing, and both are options, you generally choose your investment banks. Obviously, depending on which one you're going to do, there's a little bit of a different color of what bank you might choose. We are most likely to go through the underwritten side of it because we want to do the full roadshow and sales process, though you can do that with the direct listing as well. The selection of banks is highly confidential because obviously the banks compete in that, and you're trying to figure out who's going to give you both the best deal and make sure that, for example, we can do the things we'd like to do about letting early farmers in. Those are the kind of negotiation steps you go through there. Once you choose those banks, you sit down with your auditors, their banks, your counsel, their counsel. It's a very large room full of a bunch of very, very overpaid people. And those people put together what is an S1. That is then usually filed confidentially. And that confidential treatment means that no one except for the banking team and your lawyers and your accountants and the SEC knows it exists. That's generally not talked about until you open the filing. And that's usually shortly before you're going to go out and do the roadshow and actually then close and price the deal.
Alrighty. Next up, something we haven't actually talked about a lot in a while, and that's netspace. With the massive netspace at 37 exabyte, how exactly can a 51% attack be done, even if a malicious entity had infinite money and resources? And I would like to reiterate, they would nearly need to have infinite money and resources at this point.
It's hard. Go ahead, JM.
Yeah. We're actually at like almost 41 exabytes. Remember, we report in EIB, and the conversion is much bigger when you actually get to exabytes. But I think we've talked about this quite a bit. The global hard drive TAM for 2021 will be like 1.2 to 1.3 zettabytes. If you wanted to just purchase 20 exabytes today, that would be around $400 million, and it would be a couple year lead time, right? The hyperscalers are the ones that are actually consuming the most of storage directly from the hard drive vendors, so like your Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, and so that would be a huge increase in demand, and not something that any of the hard drive vendors could easily absorb, even if somebody had infinite money. The example that I gave, we were talking about this in the Chia forum. Somebody was asking something similar questions where if a nation state wanted to invest lots of money, China actually really literally tried to do this with Yangtze memory, to basically try to have some capability internally through their own country to basically produce NAND, to not be so dependent on the international NAND vendors. And I think they spent $24 billion in R&D over 6 years and couldn't get a single product to market. Now, eventually they probably will. If you throw enough money at the problem, you can. But hard drives have become very, very advanced and complicated. You can't just if somebody wanted to invent a new hard drive, we would think that would be an amazing thing. And if Chia somehow, gather the resources of billions of dollars in R&D for somebody to do this, I think we would actually be pretty happy, and there'd be a net positive impact on the world. But, so the more likely, scenario is that somebody tries to go, get extra demand through the hard drive vendors that are already there. And that's just not something you can do overnight. And it's not something that we are, overly concerned about. We think the net space is at a point right now where it's actually really secure.
And it probably gets more secure from here.
Alrighty. Next up, we got, I understand Chia is currently targeting institutions for large-scale adoption. I'd like to know what the use case of Chia would be for these, since you guys are prioritizing contracts over projects. For example, I'd associate Ethereum and Solana with NFTs and trading. How would you like the end user to think of Chia? Well, currently, communities are building around a project, pudgy penguins, apes, etc., which are more retail than institution-focused. This approach creates social media hype and traction,
mostly. So we're not doing either or. What we consider this to be is that projects are going to be showing up on Chia. They are probably more trading focused, more DeFi focused. There is a certain level of seriousness that we intend. One of the things, and we've been seeing this a lot as we've talked to our adopters, we say no to people. No other project has generally been like, I'm sorry, that's sprinkling blockchain on your project. And we say that. We don't want to approach and pursue and waste time on things that aren't good fits for blockchains. So money adjacency, those are good fits for blockchains. We do think that we're going to have one of the better NFT platforms, but it's probably not the very first thing we're focused on. We may miss this hype cycle on that, but that's okay. I'm actually more worried about making these things enduring and lasting and having institutions that make this art available over the long haul instead of just being a flash in the pan that bit rots. So those are the kinds of problems we're trying to solve for. If you've read the white paper, if you've heard me talk about it before, I always talk about us going after our market in a barbell strategy. On one side are governments and banks and NGOs. On the other side is DeFi collectives, hackers, artists, and we're doing both. You saw recently we brought aboard Paul Ford. It's his job to start building our own hackathon series, to really be in charge of continuing to make ChiaLisp more accessible, easier to play with. We've got some nice stuff coming in that department. But remember, guys, it's been 32 days since we released ChiaLisp documentation, right? So in 32 days, we've seen quite a bit of developer adoption already. There are, I believe, and I'll probably get this wrong, 50 projects with about 400 people in the serious hackathon. Traffic to ChiaLisp and dev in the public are much higher. And there's a lot of inbound stuff you don't hear about because there are businesses or projects associated with them that are looking to, for example, port from Solidity because they can't afford the gas and have a more interesting project that will work better in the UTXO model. That's the kinds of the stuff you're going to see out of the Cultivate program as well. So, ultimately, it's just going to take some time. I find it funny that people compare us to like 7-year-old blockchains who haven't shipped their smart contract platform when we're not even a year old and we actually shipped our smart contract platform. So.
And kind of going into that a little bit more, we have what's our plans on extending the community? The last week seemed to have been kind of quiet and flat, and interest seems to be at an all-time low. Is this topic an issue for us, or do we prioritize real business in our efforts? I'll start with the first part of that. There's kind of two halves to the community of Chia. There is the ecosystem of the people who make the blockchain's heartbeat, and that is the farmers and the plotters out there who actually are providing the resources to keep things going. And then there is all of the stuff outside of what Gene talked about, the business, plans and the partnerships that we're doing at the high level. There's also the things that come through the grant program. There are things that come from the hackathon. There are all these little small projects. People are building cool things on it. That is all of that, like all of those are a priority to us, and they're tackled in different ways through different means. They're all something that we do care about, and we do prioritize what we're providing to them. Obviously, for the actual blockchain and the farmers and the plowers, we're prioritizing fixes of things. We had to release this today or last night that fixed a pretty major issue with the nodes in terms of, if you had too many blue box time lords running, they would have problems. Like, that's a priority. We had to get that fixed. At the same time, there's different people in different teams working on, partnerships over organizations using the technology for some really cool layer 2 stuff. Anything you want to add to that?
The answer is we're going to do both.
Yeah.
The reality is that we have to be measured, and that, in the past, for all the reasons that we say there's been smoke and mirrors in this space, we're not going to do that. So, everybody wants us to get out in front and rah-rah this. I'm sorry. No, we're going to do this the right way. We're going to be here for a decade or two, maybe longer. And, we're building a real platform for financial infrastructure, inclusive platform, a sustainable platform, something that can really actually make programmable internet money go everywhere it should be.
Agreed. So this one actually, I think we had a conversation about it the other day. There's virtually no fees currently. And I would agree. I think the only time I've ever seen fees when someone includes it because they want to. Any estimate on when fees are going to grow? I think part of what defines the need for fees is when an actual block is going to be full and you need to actually compete for space to get your transaction sooner than later. And there's a lot of room I think we have left to grow in that space right now, a lot actually per block. And actually, there's another question that came through YouTube. I think we'll lump into this one, and that is people talked about block size. They said Bitcoin block holds about 1 megabyte per block. BSV is about 2 gigs. What is the actual size of a Chia block? I kind of know the answer, but I feel like this advantage isn't getting enough focus.
Well, so the better way to think about it is we're 20%, maybe 30% faster than Ethereum is on a total TPS basis. There are other reasons why that's not exactly apples to apples in a positive way, because we have things like block compression. If you're using the same coin a bunch in the UTXO model, you'll actually only put one copy of it through. So there's a bunch of things like that that are going to be very, very compressible, as are all the vanilla transactions. They compress a lot too. That's part of the reason why you got a March 19th launch of this blockchain, or pardon me, a 5.3 launch of the blockchain instead of a like 4.15 launch of the blockchain, was to get that stuff in. But Bram likes to say that, look, if your transaction's not worth $100, it probably shouldn't be on layer one. That's not now. That's 5 years from now. I think fees may start popping up a little bit in 18 months. Some of that requires extrapolation of what we think is coming in the new adoption pipeline. But even there, it turns out that we're, I want to say 2 or 3x Fedwire's total capacity ever. So, when you start thinking about it that way, there's a lot of room before we both need to have a bunch of layer one rolling things up, a bunch of Lightning making point-to-point stuff easy. So, not really worried about it, but obviously once we deliver, this new wallet, the final standard for 1.0 CATs and DID infrastructure that supports CATs, the next focus is making sure that we have a well mapped out plan for which of the 3 or 4 different L2 strategies, which are not exclusive. We may be doing quite a few of them. Others may be doing them as well. There's a lot of interest. And the thing about ChiaLisp is it was designed in such a way to make all of these different types of layer 2 much easier to implement on Chia than on any other blockchain.
I muted my mic. Whoops. Sorry about that. So back into some older topic. I think we covered this the last AMA, but happy to always talk about it again for the new folks. What is our position regarding forks? The easy answer
we love forks.
Yeah, forks are fine.
Yeah.
We're open source for a reason. Fork it. Go for it.
Don't call it Chia.
Yeah. It really, what it comes down to is forks are awesome, especially if they're doing something cool and innovative that we aren't doing that creates interest and a new way of doing things. If you just copy the fork and roll with it, that's fine. It's just the kind of question is why, but that's an answer for you. You come up with. But go ahead.
I was to say, and farmers can decide if they want to spend their resources farming these other forks. And I know one of them had some launches on the exchanges that didn't go so hot, and the people that invested some time, managing the software and messing with the ecosystem and took a risk and then, got rug pulled or something, that sucks. But, if you want to spend the time and look into the forks and eventually if they are contributing code back in, that's useful, I think, we would look at it.
Yep. I agree. Also, like Gene said, just don't use Chia in the branding of the fork. Use the code, do cool stuff. Also, make sure you know enough about what you're doing that you know how to remove some of the little hooks and tendrils we have in there for our automation and our deploy stuff and our DevOps tools. Because at the end of the day, our code base, while you can fork it, our code base is built for our needs and for the community's needs of supporting Chia. So there are things baked in there that if you do a fork, there's, the word Chia is hard coded. It's not a variable. You can't just insert your own. Our own, continuous integration tooling, our own deployment stuff is all in there. You're going to have to kind of understand what you're doing enough to pull that out because, that is purpose built. But by all means, fork it, make cool stuff. Also, if you fork it and you build something really, really cool and you think Chia should have this too, give us a PR. We'll take a look at it. We'd love to add stuff.
Yeah, the CI don't run so good unless you change a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are we willing to support, via the Cultivation Grant Program, university faculty members to create ChiaLisp programming courses for undergrad students? Honestly,
no, but yes.
Yeah, there's all kinds of Cultivation Grant stuff I would love to do. Send cool things. There was a question I kind of had along that. There was a question that came in basically saying, how many do we get? The answer is I'm not going to say the exact number of how many grant submissions we get in a given a week. The number varies. And also answering the question of how many we get is a bit subjective based on what we call a submission. The email address that I put out gets a lot of email, a lot. And I do get a lot of things submitted, but some of them are just someone emailing saying, hey, I have an idea to make this thing. It will make us all a ton of money. Let's do it. And I'm like, that was like, I've had elevator pitches literally in an elevator that were longer and more detailed than this. And then we've actually had some really good ones come through that are actually full presentations with multiple documents and supporting information, and I have shared them around, and we've discussed them, and we've talked about reaching out to these people because those are interesting. And really everything's on the table. It's programs, it's applications and tools for the blockchain, it is uses for Chia, teaching stuff like that. Like, yeah, sure, that sounds like an awesome idea. Honestly, put together a proposal and send it in. Would love to, if you are a educator at a university wanting to actually do this, send it our way. It sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, all I was saying was that I think, use that doorway, but we probably won't call it a Cultivate grant. We'll probably just actually sponsor your university work.
Yeah, and there are things that we've done that have come into the Cultivate or program or other ways that are actually, we want to support this, but it actually isn't probably under the Cultivation program. We'll do it differently. There's a couple projects I'm working on right now that are exactly that. Someone said, hey, let's do this under the grant program. And I was like, actually, let's just do this. Like, have we considered picking a fork or creating one ourselves to use a low-value UAT environment so people can run ChiaLisp apps on them with basically play money? I mean,
boy, do I have a thing for you.
Yeah, I think we have you something even better than that.
We run the actual blockchain on a test net that you can do anything you want against it. And if you want to do it with even you win all the blocks, you can create your own test net. And I'm pretty sure there's instructions for it. And if not, reach out in the testnet channel. We can get you started. But the goal is to have testnet 7, and then if it has any children, eventually that testnet to be the playground for things like layer 2 and UAT. And there is funny money there. We have a faucet. I will, if you want more than the faucet will give you, I will give you, however many Chia I feel is rational out of the wallet we have. I will splash cash around on the testnet if you need a large amount to test the layer 2 app with.
And testnet up until lately has pretty much been a thing where we do a lot of stuff on, and people are kind of aware of it. It's in the wiki, and some have dabbled on it. But we're actually working on making testnet 7 more of a publicly staging environment kind of thing. There's some work going on right now to make some more documentation on how you can use testnet if maybe you're not fully understanding. We're talking to pooling operators to even get some pools on testnet. There is some behind the scenes work literally happening the last week or two to make testnet a larger, more scaled out environment that actually has active users. I actually took an old Intel NUC I had and dusted it off wow, today's Friday already? I was going to say this, I would say a couple days ago on the weekend, but the weekend was like a week ago. Over the weekend, I dusted off an old Intel NUC and I spun up an entire testnet 7 node on there.
And I want to be clear that there is a pretty large and thriving ecosystem on the testnet. There are active transactions and users. We have spend bots running.
I tried putting a blue box on the testnet, but we ran out of stuff to do.
yeah. Well, we turned the fleet on testnet to test it, and it compressed real good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're also going to start seeing some of the projects we're talking about working with. You won't know what they're doing necessarily, but you're going to see, real UAT from the perspective of an institution making sure everything works end-to-end correctly on testnet first.
Mm-hmm. A general overall one we kind of covered a few times. I kind of held on to this one because we kind of touched on it in other answers. But any big news incoming this year to generate hype for Chia, and I would say a lot of the stuff we've kind of hinted at and alluded to here. Yes. Also. Without saying any of the big news, there's some really cool stuff coming this year for Chia. I can definitely say
it's literally on our public roadmap. If you look at it's called Big Rocks, Smart Coin.
Big Rocks.
It's literally on the roadmap. So
there are X's where the names go.
There's a lot of stuff we say we can't talk about, or things that we say we can't go into, but we actually do put some of that on the roadmap. We just couch it in a lot of hand wavy verbiage.
Yeah, and Gene, I think some people were asking questions about marketing. We do have a blog, and we put out an occasional press release. We are working on some other initiatives that are more industry-wide things that we'll be promoting it. But it's not like we're not spending money in traditional marketing per se.
Well, we are in some senses.
Yeah.
So, for example, we're going to be doing a slight iteration on the website, so it'll be getting a little bit more shiny. And look, we have different audiences with the website. Our credibility with real developers, to my mind right now, is more important than anything else, because even in our early adopters, it's too technical and complicated of a field for them to themselves make determinations about whether this is smart or not. And so what they're doing is they're turning to their techie friend, who usually has to turn to another techie friend who's even more sophisticated than that person to go, yeah, this is real. So right now we want to make sure that we're keeping that credibility and making sure that, you know, we've got the kind of details and, you know, your path to ChiaLisp. And in fact, like that's one of the things I'm most worried about our website right now is, you know, I want to learn ChiaLisp is not exactly obvious what you click on from our front page.
Yeah. Will there be more high-level tips videos, other tutorials? When yes.
Sure.
Two answers to that. One is, yeah, we can do more of those internally. We've talked about stuff we might do. Two, without going too much into detail, my team, I've begun having us have conversations with some of the more prominent YouTubers that are out there, talking to some of the folks in our community to work with them to collaborate on making these as well. A lot of them, you know, very few of us here at the company are super great personalities on camera. A couple of us, most of the folks here right now are, but we also have day jobs, very demanding day jobs. Creating content is something that we like to do here, but is also very hard. There's some really great talented people out there who already do that very well. And so we're trying to find ways we can empower them and support them to do the same for you guys. So we are working on that. Exactly what that content will be and when, I can't say, but those are things that we're definitely keeping in mind.
And because people have, go ahead, Jam.
Oh yes, and one of the things I've been talking to a few of the storage vendors about is getting on our YouTube and doing some deep dives on some of the storage technologies that people are using. A lot of people are doing a lot of crazy DIY stuff with hard drives. So I've been talking to WD and Seagate about like how do we put out some best practices about rotational vibration and power and just like some things to help the community. So I've been thinking about that as well. So if there's other stuff you guys want to see on the YouTube that's storage related,
there is. I would love to see Western Digital and Seagate hop on a video with you and explain to people how Chia is not destroying SSDs at a massively rapid rate and that we are not spiking the e-waste ecosystem of hard drives astronomically. I would love to see a video about how that's not true.
Man, yeah. A lot of you guys have been following this. Somebody wrote like some article that was talking about like Chia miners, which incorrect terminology. We're selling used SSDs as new, and we've not had anybody able to corroborate that, and nobody in the channel has said that they've had any like SSDs they've received with.
I've got an SSD I'm plotting on that hit 0% like 4 months ago,
and it's still. And I know, obviously, vendors have tools like to clear smart and stuff, and they keep those extremely locked down to like only core employees, and you have to run on site with like key exchanges and stuff. I mean, it's not something that would just get leaked out into the wild and somebody can run on.
It's not like an '84 Buick that you can just roll back the odometer on and resell it and no one knows.
Yeah. So that pissed me off, and I obviously read a lot of those comments on Hacker News that I don't know, people
software that allows you to completely just redo the smart information on a drive is as closely held as our pre-farm keys are.
The pre-farm keys are more closely held.
Yeah, the storage vendors don't want anybody to have that.
And the fact that like reputable technical like outlets were reporting that, as a matter of fact, is kind of disappointing. This is a good question. Will there be another AMA soon that's a more time zone friendly? The answer is yes. So when we do AMAs, we don't have a hard set schedule of every other week on Friday or we do kind of do one every 2 to 3 weeks, and it happens as a matter of due course of things because we have releases come out, we have major news come out, and the cadence of our stuff is roughly monthly, give or take, on big things with incremental things in between, and that kind of triggers interest in one at a rolling cycle of a month or just under. And so they tend to be kind of like that, but we don't have a hard set schedule. But they do tend to be on a Friday because it just works out well for us. One of the biggest reasons, honestly, is getting the people you see here together for an hour to do this. Our schedules are pretty crazy during the week. And our company as a whole, our Fridays are kind of light. Our Fridays are mostly a heads down day and do stuff. And then the weekend comes when the weekend comes to you based on your time zone. Few of us have a lot of meetings on Friday. So it's very easy to schedule these. But the timing is sort of drifting throughout the afternoon because something I've learned trying to coordinate meetings with people literally all around the world is there's always the one time zone. There's always that one quarter of the earth that kind of gets screwed on timing. If you do something globally, it's unavoidable. You have to pick which one kind of gets left out. And this particular one is the first one I've planned and scheduled. And I chose the timing that I did both on our schedule and coverage. And I made a note when I scheduled this one on exactly what part of the world got left out. It's 4 a.m. in India. I definitely made a mental note of the fact that, China, India, that place, it's very, very weird time for them. And so I planned this so that the next time we do one, I am going to shift this time off by like 8 hours or more, and somewhere else is going to get inconvenient. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, we're probably never going to do an AMA where all of us here are on the same at 2 in the morning our time for everyone else. I don't think North America is ever going to be like the shafted part of the planet.
Hey, we did 7 a.m. for the launch.
Yeah, you don't want us on an AMA at 2 a.m. because we're going to be both caffeinated and probably have been drinking in order to do that, and that won't be good for anyone. And
also,
if you're complaining now about our IPO being delayed, that might cause it to get delayed even more. But I will say we're going to shift them around to be better times. I think everyone here will gladly do one at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. once every 3 or 4 months if they have to, for the benefit of everyone else.
Yeah. Also, I know that Paul Hainsworth has just raised his hand privately and gone, "Hey, we should talk roadmap on the next AMA." So that may be your next AMA topic.
Yeah, and that actually would be a good thing to cover. Hook up Chia with Riot Games merch. Get someone noticed up the portals back here. Yeah, I actually, for those who don't know, I worked at Riot Games for several years, and so I have a lot of Riot paraphernalia back here behind me, as well as my Chia license plate. Yeah, I think a roadmap would be a great topic to kind of focus one of our AMAs on, because people do ask about it a lot. I have the number of times I bookmarked our Trello roadmap board because the number of times I have to copy and paste it in Reddit or copy and paste it in Keybase, it gets asked a lot. And our roadmap, the Trello kind of shows a lot of our roadmap, but our roadmap's kind of also esoteric. Certain things are written or phrased in a way that maybe you don't quite understand what we're talking about.
Like somebody asked the question in the chat that says, "Are you going to implement Mad Max and Chia?" It's literally in the roadmap, one of those columns with the date on it. So yeah, we certainly are working on that and other things.
Mad Max and Bladebit.
You may be very shocked and surprised soon.
Will there be official Chia merch? Actually, yeah, I'm kind of working on a plan around that. Admittedly, in the last 4 weeks, it kind of fell to the side because there was some stuff going on that, I'll be honest, the two of us internally who are working on that, we work on a lot of things, and if I have to choose between communications on things around the 1.26 release and the importance of updating because of the Time Lords, or getting you guys t-shirts with the Chia logo on it, I want those t-shirts, and you do too, but I want those patches to go out more importantly. But yes, merch is something that we're kind of interested in getting you guys some cool stuff on, and I have some cool ideas around some cool stuff we can do with merch too, beyond just like, oh, look, hoodies and t-shirts, yay. No, I've got some really cool ideas in the works we're working on there. Speaking of the blue boxes and the patch, something I want to kind of harp on. I made an update earlier today to our blog, and I kind of shared it around social media. We do want people to, a lot of people sometimes don't update. There's the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I know a lot of people who are still running 1.17. 1.17, yeah. 1.17 was like a really good release for a while. And I know a lot of people who are still on it because they're like, I don't need pooling. I'm solo plotting by myself because I have so many. I'm happy here. And that's fine. We get it. The same reason why like Ubuntu, for example, has like LTR releases and then the short-term releases. But that being the case, we do want to harp on people the importance of updating to 1.2.6 if reasonable for you in your situation. And the reason being, and I outlined this in a blog post today that I encourage people to read because it both explains the reasoning for this and gives a little context over what happened last week. And that is, the thing that caused the memory issue on nodes was that we turned on a lot, and I mean a lot, of blue boxes to help compact down the blockchain because it needed it. And the amount of blue boxes in the community at large wasn't enough to keep up with the curve. And so we turned on a lot. And that's what caused the problem, was nodes were getting too many compacted blocks, and they were not efficiently handling all those incoming blocks. They needed some updates to handle them better. We're going to turn them back on. Justin's not going to push the button tomorrow and spin them all up again. But over the next few weeks, we're going to ramp up more and more and more of them back into the triple digits for a short time to get the blockchain down to something manageable to where the rest of the ecosystem can take care of them itself. When we do that, if you haven't updated, depending on the hardware you have and what you're running, you may start to feel pain again, and you may start to run out of memory again, because if you don't have this new handling logic, you're going to potentially get compressed blocks faster than you can process them. So we do very much encourage you to please update.
Yeah, and the nice part is once we do catch up, it doesn't take a lot of blue boxes to stay caught up.
Yeah.
Will there be a database size pretty significant decrease when we're caught up, or
So yes, but no. And the no is that we probably need to vacuum the database, and that's something I'm probably going to add to a future release as well.
Okay. This one, in the same way, Chia will promote use of XCH by low or negative rates loans to institutions. Will there be support for large miners who want to provide the same services as a third-party companies working with the same underlying assets of XCH? I tried to grammatically clean that one up in translation as I read it. Hopefully, I didn't make it worse. And yeah, go ahead.
The answer is yeah. We'd love it if you guys were loaning, and we didn't have to. Like, it's not necessarily critical for us.
And I got two left here I'm going to do. Just so you guys know, it is 4 o'clock Pacific right now, which is kind of our stop time. We're not going to cut it right now at 4, but I'm going to wrap up these last two discussions and do a little closing chat here. So if you have anything else, I can't guarantee we'll answer, but submit it right now, because as we go through these two, if something really good comes in, we'll cover it. Otherwise, we're going to end after these two. JM, for you. Can we get the storage sweepstakes? Like awarding an 18 terabyte hard drive or something to people. There was a t-shirt competition last year.
Yeah. Well, for the one part is I'm actually working with the storage vendors. They asked if they could like come into the community and ask the farmers questions. I'm like, yeah, of course. And they're certainly looking at doing something like that as far as getting responses to surveys and giving out some hardware or something. So I'll remind them next week and get something like that going. And then I don't know, G, as far as our own contests, we were gonna, we talked about a plotting contest. It's not like we've forgotten. It's just, you heard we have a ton of other stuff going on. So once we get all the other plotters integrated into the actual Chia plotting code, and to where you can use all the different types of plotters within the core code, we'll actually schedule something. So.
Yeah, a lot of what I think we thought was going to be the fruit that was going to be found by a competition was found by Mad Max and BladeBit. And so from that perspective, now it's really thinking about how best to make it easy for end users to go, oh, I want to use Mad Max, or I want to use the standard one, or I want to use BladeBit. And, it's kind of three different kind of profiles depending on what hardware you have available. So we're going to try to clean that up a little bit. And then once we have that a bit more stable, I think then it's time to do something that maybe looks like a King of the Hill contest to try to speed up any one of those three profiles.
I do have a good question that came in, two actually, about blue boxes. I'll add in here and cover. The first is, what happens if all the blue boxes disappeared for some reason? Would the chain continue to function? And are there any benefits for farmers to run the blue boxes? The first one's easy. Yeah, chain would be fine. The blue boxes just help make the database smaller. I covered this a little bit in the blog post that I made today about why you should update. And that is, the Time Lord works really, really fast. Whichever lead Time Lord is moving the chain forward is the fastest Time Lord. And it is doing everything it can to make these as fast as possible, at the expense of everything else, including efficiency, which means the blocks are uncompressed. And so blue boxes kind of come along behind like little Roombas and just sort of clean up the mess and compress the blocks down. If they weren't there, the chain would function fine. Our database would just grow in size faster than it currently does. And it would be a much bigger file for a node to manage, but it would work just fine. And as to the benefit for farmers to run them, the answer is technically no. There's no like farming reward equivalent for running a blue box. It's just a community service you're providing. What I recommend to people is, if you have a very powerful machine that you built for plotting and you have stopped plotting and you're no longer doing plotting, and that machine is also your harvester and farmer, and so you have all that processing power just sitting there as a harvester and farmer, that'd be a great time to convert some of that resource over and fire up a blue box. You're helping the community. You're not really wasting horsepower because it's already sitting there farming and harvesting. It helps everyone. It's a good benefit. But there's no monetary or material benefit from doing it.
The machine also doesn't have to be a beast. Like, you can turn on a very low power blue box and it will just take a very long time to compress blocks. You can run it on a Raspberry Pi. We run it on small class instances in AWS.
More power just means more stuff that can do faster, but the actual individual compression, and then the last one that I was going to do, someone asked about, do I plan to engage, or my team in general plan to engage in Chia Discord communities, or are we staying on Reddit Keybase? Yes and no. Me and a lot of people on my team hang out in a lot of different Discord servers. If you notice, a lot of the top 4 or 5 pools, I'm in there. I'm in a couple different pooling Discords, partially because of communicating with them on some pooling related stuff, also just out of curiosity. We are in those discords and we sometimes share information when relevant. I'll be like, oh, hey, I see you guys talking about this. Something's not accurate. Let me explain this. And I might do that. But as a general rule, our official form of live communication is always going to be Keybase. We really like Keybase because Keybase makes it, generally speaking, next to impossible to impersonate a Chia employee. And we work with money. We work, we're a financial technology company essentially, and identity verification is very important. If someone can try to impersonate us in Discord and potentially get away with it, or at least cause confusion and problems, it's different on Keybase. You can look at our profiles and you can see our GitHub link in our profile validated, and you can click that GitHub link and you can see that we're a member of the Chia organization on GitHub. We're clearly an employee. You don't get that on Discord, and so we will not likely officially, formally interact in those spaces. You may see me or others engaging in there as a consumer of that pool or a consumer of that discussion, but not necessarily in a formal way. Reddit, we also engage on just because Reddit was a tricky one. Reddit's its own community. We don't moderate it. We don't own it. We don't manage it. But a lot of us were Redditors in that ecosystem before we joined the company. And there was some concern when some of us used it a lot and then joined the company that it wasn't clear who was a Chia employee, who wasn't. And there were some concerns of people crying foul. And so Flare was added to identify who is a Chia employee to avoid confusion. So then the question is, do we all just stop engaging on Reddit entirely once we join the company? Or do we just leave that Flare on and engage as that? So we do engage a lot on Reddit. I would say it might not be as large of a community as some of the Discords are, but it's also not trivial. It's not small. It's also, if you Google and search things about Chia, one of the first things you're going to get a lot of hits for is the subreddit community. And so it does make sense for us to engage there and to be a part of that. And so we will continue to engage there as well, a lot as well. But do know that when we engage on Reddit, we consider that the community's ecosystem, and we are guests and visitors there. We don't consider ourselves to own it. The mods don't, close things at our request. They don't drive discussions the way we want them to. We are beholden to the same rules everyone else is with the mods there. And at any thread, at any time, a mod can be like, stop that, get out of here, and we'll acquiesce. So yeah. And that's pretty much it. We have, as far as we have time for today, and most of the questions. If you sent in questions after that, I do apologize. We just only have so much time to do these, but we are going to be doing more. So
everybody have a great weekend.
Yeah, have a
You
great
too.
one.
Thanks, guys.
I'm gonna go do a long drive to start my weekend. So
Here's everybody.
thanks for coming, everybody.
Switch this water out for beer soon. So
I'm mixed.